Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Adi. The Aero India 2023, although some great sights and sounds of fighter aircraft flying around Bangalore, has a deeper imperative for India. To discuss that imperative for India, I have with me Marshal Anil Khosla, who's going to tell us what is the deeper significance of the Aero India 2023 and where do we see this show going in the future. Sir, good afternoon and welcome.
Good afternoon, Adi, Jai Hind, and as always, it's a pleasure talking to you. And very apt topic you've chosen, and apt day when the Air India 23 just culminated after 5 days, and the topic is very important for aviation and defense industry, and also for the India's endeavor towards self-reliance. And the theme actually of Aero India says it all. It says runway to billion opportunities. That really sums up the whole of Aero India and its modalities. So let's go ahead.
Yeah, sir, I've been attending Aero India this year. I couldn't go, but I've been attending Aero India for years now. At least since I was a child, and the shows used to be small and compact, and uh, they were not very widely publicized, especially around the world. This year we see something different, sir. So how would you like to see Aero India, which has come to today, has evolved over the past some time?
Yeah, so actually, I've been attending Aero India's quite a few of them, and started in 1996 in India, and this is the 14th edition of Aero India. It has really come of age, and the major change which is taking place is that from a air show, it is going into a realm of a massive business opportunity for defense and aviation related industry. And this time, if you see, 800 companies, out of which 700 are domestic and 110 odd foreign companies, 32 countries, defense ministers, chiefs of air staff of 29 countries, 73 CEOs of global and Indian companies have visited. And I don't know exactly what are the footfall finally, but it was expected that 5 lakh people will visit within these 5 days. And if you see the list of companies, all the major defense equipment producers have a presence there. You know, made Airbus, Boeing, Dassault, Lockheed Martin, IAE, BrahMos, Saab, Safran, even Indian HAL, DPSUs. So everyone, I mean, it's really grown into a big affair. Actually, it is Asia's biggest at the moment, considered a biggest air show in Asia. And I've witnessed a few of foreign air shows also, like Singapore or Zhuhai in China and UK Riyadh. I find that the conduct of Aero India and the layout and the way business is conducted, as well as displays done, as well as the static display, the stalls, everything is totally at par with the world shows. A very interesting thing, Adi, before I finish with this, the first air show was conducted in France in 1909. That is 113 years back. And now there are at least 7 or 8 major air shows which are conducted in a year, including Paris, Farnborough, Dubai, Singapore, Zhuhai, Riyadh in UK, Moscow. So India is at par with these air shows. Yeah,
That's
Adi.
interesting. So what was different this year, sir?
Oh, yeah. So this year, actually, the first difference I found was as compared to last year, because of pandemic last year, the conduct and the participation was very low key. This year, I think the pandemic fear was over, so it was done in a much larger scale. As I covered the number of companies and displays and the shows, I mean, it was a much larger scale. Then, few other things which stood out uh, this time. The Russian presence was very minimal. Generally, the Russians are par with any other country, and they showcase. I think because of the preoccupation with their occurrences, their presence was minimal. Second was the US presence was in a big way. They had brought F-18s, F-16, which they're fielding as F-21 for India, F-35, the latest fighter, and B-1B bombers. So US came in a big way. Then third thing which was standing out was that the DRDO and the DPSUs, that is the domestic industry, the stalls and displays were very, very predominant. Okay. And fourth thing which was glaring was, the glamorous foreign aerobatic teams, and you have those Red Bulls and those wing walkers, which are the local people who not in the business but who go to see the air show. It is for them. Those were missing. So what it indicated was to me that it is shifting its focus from air show to more of a commercial business event. And of course, the F-35 display was superb. Yeah, that aircraft was too good. I mean, it was treat to watch that aircraft flying, and you wonder how does it fly? Because it's just a shape of a wing and two fins. That's it, and everything is internal. And the beauty of it was only two personnel saw the aircraft off and received it. It was really, nice. And of course, our Surya Kiran and Sarang, of course, they are always inspiring. So, overall, I think uh, the focus was on Atmanirbharta and the self reliance. I think that's what stood out in the whole air show.
Was That's what I wanted to ask you this year. I mean, the focus was more towards, it looked like that we were projecting what we have made
Yeah,
in terms of not just the aircraft and stuff like that, but avionics and other subsidiaries as well. Was that something that you saw within the stalls and stuff like that? And was that something at the governmental level was given the priority?
absolutely, Adi, you're very correct in saying that. Actually, if you start with the PM's statement in the beginning itself, he gave his vision as make in India and make for the world. I mean, he's taken one step ahead. And the whole emphasis, focus, or aim, whatever you call it, was on not only self-reliance, Atmanirbharta, make in India, but going in for enhancing the export content of our defense and arms industry, and also going in for collaborations, joint ventures, co-production, technology transfer. So all these things were very, very evident. India was being projected as a possible manufacturing hub, a cheaper and a better option. That is what was being projected. And the idea, I think, was, to my mind, was to change from biggest defense importer to maybe arms exporter, and in phases maybe. And media is already reporting that we are exporting some or the other defense related equipment to 75 odd countries already. So the whole emphasis was in partnership with foreign as well as and the foreign companies also playing ball. They were also pitching the sales pitch accordingly, knowing that India's main focus is on self reliance as well as for production in India. And also, another thing which stood out was that our startups and MSMEs, they were being given, their hands were being held, and the idea was to get into the supply chain, global supply chain. And in the beginning it was expected that 250 plus MOUs worth 75,000 crore of business might take place. Acha, before we go further, Adi, if you allow me 1 minute, there are three events which took place which give you the whole flavor of the Aero India. I'll just cover them. One was,
Please, sir.
on 13th February, if you remember in the media also it came out, the RM chaired a roundtable conference with CEOs of aerospace and defense industry. 26 countries were represented, 75 plus CEOs took part in this. This was basically to, whatever I covered so far for joint ventures and co-production and all those issues. Then next day on 14th February, a defense ministers conclave was conducted. Once again, 32 odd countries defense ministers came. It was a big share. And the theme was what government has promulgated as SPEED, SPEED, that is shared prosperity through what do you call it? Enhance engagement in defense. So that was the whole theme, and idea was to grow together. And on next day, that is on 15th, there was a ceremony called Bandhan, and that is the day maximum MOUs agreements were announced, major projects were announced, the products were launched. So these three events, if you see, they give you the whole flavor of Aero India, and whatever we have said so far, it substantiates that. And actually speaking, the on the Bandhan Day, 266 partnerships, 201 MOUs, 53 major announcements, three transfer of technology, and nine product launches were announced on this day. So now the details will emerge subsequently, but this is what the initial inputs which are coming for. Yeah,
That
Adi.
is interesting. I mean, it looked like a lot of stuff was just kept for announcement for this particular show,
Yeah,
because
maybe.
it's difficult to kind of list out so many things. But the major thing that I want to talk about is the MRO, sir. The
Yeah, yeah,
Lockheed Martin MRO. That's a big thing because C-130 is an aircraft which is used. I mean, I think everyone has in Southeast Asia. If you look at it from, except for I think even the Iranians have it, of course, but they won't buy arms from they won't buy the spares from the Lockheed Martin. But it starts from Israel right across through to Japan. So that's a big one. And of course, the engine manufacturing with regards to the GE engines, the 404 and 414, which is moved
yeah.
forward. How do you find that to be significant? Because at the end of it, what we are looking for is engines, and what we are looking for is with MRO comes know-how. So how significant is that for the Indian aviation sector, as per se, sir?
Yeah, Adi, you have brought out two very, very important aspects related to defense and aviation industry. Both are very, very important. MRO is very important because I'll just take a minute or two on that, and then I'll switch over to engines. MRO, there's a big market and a potential in India, both civil and military. Now, if you see the news which has been, that Air India is buying 470 aircraft, and
Today,
the
Indigo
aviation,
has also come.
yeah, the
Sorry to
aviation
interrupt
industry.
you. Indigo has also come in with some 500 aircraft more.
Yeah. So you can see the aviation industry how it is growing, and if I cover some statistics, in 2021 we were considered as seventh largest as far as aviation, civil aviation is concerned, and by it is expected that by 2026 will be the third largest, and by going by these figures which we just covered, buying of these aircraft, will be just behind US and China, and which is true. When you have such a large fleet of aircraft, obviously the MRO growth potential is there. And if the figures have to be believed, then from 1.7 billion industry, it is likely to grow to a 4 billion US dollar industry by 2031. Okay, so there is a larger potential. That is why so much of importance. Now, as far as India is concerned, the problem is, 90% of our MRO requirements are by import. So that is where we are losing out money, we are losing out on downtime and all of those things. So our indigenous effort or the capacity is at the moment in a nascent stage. This aspect was also, given a push during this Aero India, and not only in Aero India. Last few years, a lot of things have been done to increase the MRO potential of our this thing, that is maintenance, repair, and overall. Because some people may be wondering what is MRO. Uh, I'll just cover one or two efforts which have been done. One is the in the Aero India seminar. The Air Force, Indian Air Force, had hosted one seminar. The title was "Sustenance in MRO and Obsolescence Management." So, not management, mitigation. That means the obsolescence mitigation. And how does it enhance the op capability? During this, the inaugural speech, Raksha Mantri ji, brought out the joint effort for India and the MRO hubs, and the India being projected as a potential MRO hub in future. So that is very important. Okay, one more thing about MRO. I mean, India has started looking into it holistically. Even Niti Ayog had done a study, and the report is available in 2022 October. I think they promulgated, and it covers what are the trends, what are the challenges, what are the suggestions. It's an interesting study, and I'm planning to write on my blog about the MRO benefits, issues, challenges, and suggestions. Maybe I'll share it with you all once I get down to writing that. And Government has also given an MRO policy in 2021, and the vision for 20 is that by 2040, 90% of our domestic needs should be met uh, by ourselves, that is indigenously. But we are competing with countries like Singapore, Turkey, Malaysia, who have already captured or established MRO market over and above the uh, big industry which are already there. So, uh, MRO, you've said very rightly, and we need to get our act right, and it's got a lot of potential. The
Mhm.
way ahead is, you cannot jump into it straight away. So it has to be a phase-wise approach. Going into joint ventures and then starting with smaller items like electronics and avionics and structural repairs, and getting into slightly bigger ones subsequently like engines and structural assemblies and things like that. So that is where we need to go. The issue is being addressed, and that is the best part of it. So, and the second most important thing, you talked about engines. If you remember, Adi, we talked about engines, fighter engines, when we did a show on LCA. You remember that?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Yeah. So, same thing still holds. The hold of the engine technology is with very few, and they don't want to part with it. Okay, and like US has got General Aviation, Pratt and Whitney, UK has got Rolls Royce, then France has got Safran, Russia has got. So basically, engine, without the engine, the platform is of no use, and they don't want to part with the technology. And it's a very specialized technology because the engine components are subjected to very high temperature, very high stress levels because of the very high RPMs. Okay, now, what is happening is, one is engine manufacturer and second is the engine MRO also. Both are interrelated. Okay. So, what is happening is all the engine manufacturers are not only monopolizing the engine market but also monopolizing the MRO, engine MRO market. How they're doing it is in two ways. One is, they're giving a comprehensive package at the time of signing of deal,
Same.
where they say,
Mhm.
okay, next 7 years or 10 years or 15 years, we'll give you a comprehensive post-sale support in terms of repairs and sales and this thing. So they get the market for those many years. And second way, what they're doing is now with this online monitoring of engines, when you're flying even C-130 you mentioned, or C-17 is there. So online you can monitor these engine performances, and based on that they analyze that and they give you technical support according to those, sort of a preventive monitoring. So by these two measures, they're doing is they're monopolizing the whole engine MRO, even MRO, this thing. As far as India is concerned, you are aware that Kaveri engine, we've been struggling quite a bit. Yesterday, was an interesting thing. You also must have read it in the news media. That Kaveri engine has done airborne high altitude tests
High
on a
altitude
Russian.
test.
Yeah, L-76. You remember you saw it?
Yes, sir.
So, yeah, so the program as such is not shelled, but we have learned a lot from it. And they're saying by MCA Mark II, we'll have an indigenous engine, but that is quite far away. To my mind, we should get into engine MRO first and then get into engine manufacturing. Of course, we'll need some hand holding by established countries. And that's why we should go in front in a joint venture or a co-production model. And Indian MRO, as far as engine is concerned, it's not that it's missing. It is there. As far as the military is concerned, it is done by HL. All sort of engines are under license production and repair and everything. And civil, Air India has got a subsidiary, and there's another company called Airworks who provide, and there are a few other smaller ones who do the engine MROs in collaboration with the parent companies. So this also is part of the whatever we covered earlier regarding MRO. So that is where we stand, and way ahead for these two issues, that is MRO as well as engine manufacturing is concerned. Yeah, Adi.
So let's get into a little bit of a criticism, which is the common criticism heard. Of course, you've been a flyer yourself, and I'm sure you have a bookload to tell about HAL and its capabilities. Without getting into all that, what we are today planning into to get into is basically exports. We want to sell our products abroad, and
Yeah.
a lot of detractors would call it ambitious. Some people would call it foolhardy, even. Uh, I have two views now. I mean, but I'd like to ask you: uh, exports a support structure for domestic production, or is exports a dream that we should not even think about till the time we're not able to streamline it for ourselves? Which one of the two arguments would you fall by, sir?
Yeah, very, very, very valid question and very good question, Adi. We have been promulgating, as I said, PM's speech also. He gave a vision. Defense importer to production partner to defense supplier exporter, like you said. And you're very rightly saying it gets trolled. We are daydreaming. We are trying to run before we even want to walk. These are fancy ideas, very fancy, meaningless slogans. So these are the trolls which you see in social media. Uh, but if you go by the growth mindset, Adi, all the good things, they start small. Okay. And it is always good to have a vision. Okay. And you take small steps initially, and then you move towards it. So, to my mind, these are all phases. You were defense importer earlier. You had a dubious record of the biggest defense importer. Now you started this campaign of Make in India, which is yielding some results. The government has done under 16, 17 verticals. We have talked about it earlier, if you remember. What are the various measures to improve Atmanirbharta and self-reliance? We had talked about it earlier. I've written about it in my blog also. Under 16, 17 verticals, action has been taken, and it is yielding results. So that kickstart has been done. There is no harm into going into next phase or to think about the next phase or the end state. To my mind, it's fully justified to have a vision and start working towards it. The second reason why I say this is, Adi, when you start a project or start this thing like you started Make in India and self-reliance, some projects will move very fast. Some projects will take some more time. You cannot say ki it should be sequential, that everything finishes then only a start. So in that case, you are curtailing the projects which are going fast. Let them grow fast. So to my mind, these phases, there is no clear cut sequential line. It is all blurred, and you should progress in this, and we should go into next phase. Whichever projects are moving faster, we should go into next phase. Is absolutely justifiable to my mind. And pace is picking up thanks to pandemic and China's attitude. I think we have put the foot on the accelerator as far as self-reliance is concerned, and we should get into next phase. Now your question, which was very, very pertinent, you know uh, getting a private sector into the defense production is very, very important, and equally important is to have a market. Now if you have domestic market, it is limited. So you have to have a global market. You have to put your foot into the global market. All right. So export is a necessity. Then only we'll be able to grow, and then only we'll be able to uh, have a foothold into this whole gamut in the world, and we'll be able to do better. It's a necessity to my mind. All right. uh, Having said that, it's not easy to get into straight away into defense export. It is a lot of work which required to be done. I've written about it in my blog. How to what are the areas where we need to get into, and it's a holistic approach. You're competing with established industry which is already established. So you have to have an ecosystem. You have to have an organization to promote export. You have to look into your policies for ease of doing business. You have to look into your end product quality, aesthetics. You have to look into safety aspects. You have to look into your working ethos. You have to look into infrastructure support in terms of land leasing, power, and other things. You have to look into post sale support. You have to look into punctuality and timelines, competitive pricing, then responsibility as an integrator, then protection capability, domestic induction and use, and most important, media warfare and trials that everyone watches. So I think if address you have to address a lot of things, but in the end, I think it is justified to think about it and start taking action towards it. Adi.
Indeed, sir. I mean, the recent inauguration of that helicopter plant in Tumkur with 90 helicopters as the capacity. I
Yeah.
mean, 90, of course, is not as big as probably Bell helicopters and stuff like that, but they're producing about 120 to 150 helicopters a year. So 90 seems pretty significant for the factor that helicopters, as a matter of fact, the light attack helicopter and all that stuff that we've got, are uh, required in those numbers. So that's probably 1 or 2 years worth of production capacity. Now, what do you do with that plant after that? So that's something which is interesting that you brought out. Uh, isn't it also true that, for example, the Russians or the French that we buy aircraft from, so every time we buy an aircraft, they add in a few squadrons of their own within that cost?
Yeah, that is there. And also, you mentioned about helicopters. There's a big market for helicopters in India itself. The three services need helicopters: Army, Navy, Air Force, and then paramilitary and the whole lot of other agencies. The domestic market requirement is huge for helicopters, and a lot of work is going on, even in these uh, what I said, MOUs and other things which are signed. HL has signed two, three related to helicopter. One is related to the engine support with France, Safran, and one is related to giving support to Argentinian Air Force. So a lot of work is going on the helicopter front as well.
Yes, it was interesting to read the Philippines being interested in the LCH. So that
Yeah,
was pretty interesting at that time. Um, you spoke about the F-35 to begin with. So of course, I think great looking aircraft, fantastic performance, but a very it's got a history as well as being one of the most expensive aircraft in the world to buy and fly after that. Got
yeah,
its
yeah.
issues just like any other machine. But
Mm.
I don't think it's in my opinion, sir, I don't think it's the aircraft that mattered. It was the geopolitical positioning that was being displayed uh, with this aircraft. How would you comment on it, sir?
Yeah. So if you remember in the beginning, I said what was different this year was that firstly, Russian presence was very minimal and US presence was very high. And US presence in the sense, if you see, US brought in F-16, it brought in F-18s, and it brought in F-35, which is the latest aircraft, and it flew B-1B bombers, correct? So it's a big contingent. And if you see F-16, which improved version, they're fielding as F-21 for the Indian Air Force. They're eyeing the 114 project for the MRFA. And F-18, they're trying to get Indian Navy interested in it. And at one time, Indian Navy was interested in F-18. So these are the sales pitch. Now, a lot of debate is going on whether F-35 was brought in for, is it on offer or not? And your analysis is quite right that I don't think F-35 offer. There are various reasons for that. Uh, One is that it doesn't fit into the Indian scheme of things.
Yeah,
When I say Indian scheme of things, at the moment we talked about it earlier. You remember one of the first shows which we did was IAF capability buildings. I remember some 15, 16 shows before. First show, one of the first shows
yeah,
we
yeah,
did,
yeah.
second and third, I think. So at the moment, Indian scheme of things is to get self-reliant, Atmanirbhar. And how we're doing it is, we got LCA as a matured. Now we're going into LCA Mark II, then AMCA, fifth generation aircraft. And buying another fifth generation aircraft is, doesn't fall into that scheme at all. Okay, we are saying that by 2032, AMCA should be there. Okay, there are other reasons also why I don't think Americans will offer, and I don't think why Indians will ask also. Is one is, it is a latest technology as a technology model. Actually, US what it does is, you remember we did a show on air supremacy, air superiority.
Hmm.
That is also there. So what they do is air dominance. If you remember, we had used the term. So they do the air dominance by building a technologically superior platform. And at the moment, whatever you say, F-35 is the most technologically superior fighter aircraft in the world. Okay, so it's got stealth, it has got jammed with computing power, it has got high situational awareness, network ops, it has got very advanced helmet mounted display, electro optical targeting systems. Will they offer the latest technology like that to anyone? That is one. They will lose out, they will be sharing it with others.
Who's not a
Second is the
NATO
cost.
power at the end?
Yeah, I'm coming to that. Second, you said is the cost. You're right. They spend money on it, yeah, and they are going to take the development cost out of it. It is going to
Mhm.
be very costly. Can we afford it? Can we afford it at this stage? That is the second point. Third aspect is, the production capability. The US requirement is some 2,465, some figure is there. By next 20 years, that is 2042 or 44. So this is only US requirement. Now add to it the production or co-development partners who have funded the project. Add to it the NATO partners, their requirements. Now, if you want it, when will your turn come? Yeah. So
Standing
that is
line.
the next one. Correct. Okay. Then so keeping all these minds, then other issue is it's a conglomerate of so many people. Getting clearances for export and all those is a big hassle. Yeah. So anyway, that's not a major point, but still. Then next issue, there are two more issues which are not come out in the media as such. One is we pulled out of FGFA with Russia, fifth generation aircraft, if you remember. Why did we pull out? We got the two reasons. One is the cost, and second is the transfer of technology issues. Both these issues will come up in this also. So, would you like to buy and add another this thing? Then you will be totally reliant on USA. You will be totally shifting from, at the moment you got equipment from both sides, Russia as well as this thing, but then you will be totally tilted towards USA. Going by the past experiences of sanctions and all, would you like that? Then another factor is there, Adi, S400. You brought S400 from Russia. If you remember, there was an issue of offering these aircraft F-22 and F-35 to Turkey because Turkey had gone in for S-400. Same is the situation with us. So keeping this 7 or 8 factors in mind, I don't think F-35 is in for commercial reasons in Aero India 23. I think it is more of a political signaling and all the countries who are watching that we are strategically close to India, we are with India, and that is what political signaling or whatever you want to call it. It is because of that reason they come in such a big way, and they've shown F-35 and B-1 bomber. Talking about B-1, let me take 30 seconds on that. I've written that up also on the blog because a lot of people at one time, some news outlet came out that one B-1 bomber should be bought, or not B-1, some bomber, strategic bomber. Everyone has. China has.
TU-160.
Yeah, yeah,
TU-160 they were talking about.
yeah, correct. So India, why is India not buying it all? India does it need a bomber at the moment? Even if it needs, or even if it wants, the priority list it is way down in the priority list. We don't even have full fighter strength as such. Where will you go in for bombers? The priority list contains of fighters, completing the fighters requirement, the numbers. Then going into combat support aircraft like FRAs, that you get numbers of AWACS and UAVs and things like that. Then comes your avionics and weapons, specialized weapons. Then comes survivability and all those equipment, network centricity, all those issues, and then maybe B-1 bomber. So I don't think B-1 bomber is also for commercial reason. These F-35 and B-1, I think, were only for political signaling. Yeah, D.
I want to ask you, detract a little bit and ask you, sir. India also looks at a with the kind of battle, evolving in the dark and stuff like that. A ground attack aircraft, a specialized ground attack air cover support, cover aircraft like a A-10 Warthog. I believe in sometime in history we were offered that as well, or a Su-25, which is proving to be pretty strong, a flying tank as it's called in Ukraine. Uh, what do you think is the priority for something like that, sir?
No, now the trend is changing, and you know, especially for air forces like ours, where uh, we are in a stage where uh, we don't have adequate numbers as far as fighters are concerned. Uh, the trend is changing now. Instead of having specialized ground attack and air defense roles, you have multi roles. So even F-35 is a multi role. Ground attack as well as air to air defense domination, what they call it. Even electronic warfare as well as ISR as well as suppression of enemy air defenses. So it's got multiple roles. When Rafale came in, we did a talk about Rafale also, and Rafale they're saying is omni role, that simultaneously it is doing ground attack and air defense. Now
Mm-hmm.
you're talking about platforms which are doing simultaneously, not even configuration change on the ground and then going, not even multi-range, that you have both types of weapons and you do ground attack and then go to air defense, or other way around. Omni role you're doing simultaneously. You have nominated the target in the air. The target is being tracked by the systems, and as and when it comes within the envelope of your weapon which you have assigned, weapon will go automatically. It is autonomous. And while all that is happening behind the scene, after you have assigned the target and the weapon, you may be doing some other role. You may be doing air ground attack. So that is what Rafale is. So in that scenario where we are going into platforms which are omni-role and multi-role, I mean, going back to specialized aircraft, we can't afford. Secondly, firstly, and secondly, I don't think that is the correct way of doing it. If you have adequate number of aircraft as well as your domestic industry, which is very advanced, then maybe you can think of having these luxuries of specialized aircraft. Yeah, Adi.
So what about
That's
the
my
Indian
opinion.
Air Force? What does the Indian Air Force gain from an Aero India?
Yeah,
Apart
so
from recognition around the world and good air shows and this and that, but
yeah,
what do you actually gain?
yeah, very, very pertinent question. IAF, you see, earlier the Aero India was conducted always by Ministry of Defense. Earlier it was done by Ministry of Defense along with IAF. And even MOD cell had a IAF officer on deputation who used to coordinate the whole thing. And now trend has shifted because it become more of a commercial venture. So now it is being done by HAL along with MOD. Air Force has got a big role in the whole thing. Firstly, the premises of Air Force, that is Air Force Station Yalanka, and it's got all the infrastructure, all the flying environment, everything is there. So that is one. And when you do host a show of such a nature, whole lot of issues you get involved with. Traffic management, security, safety issues of flying aircraft, planning and conducting the flying displays. So the full Air Force controls the whole flying display. The team of Air Force officers who plan the whole thing, who conduct it, who monitor it, and everything is done by them. So Air Force has got a big role, and there is a gain also in the as far as Air Force is concerned. So one is that you get to interact with all the foreign air forces. I covered chiefs of almost 29, 30 countries visit, if chiefs, not chief, vice chiefs, senior officers. So you interact and you gain from them. Secondly, you see what is available in the market, the latest technology, and how can you utilize it in your scheme of things. How can you develop systems so you get good ideas, you learn a lot of things from that. Third thing is what do you call it? The Air Force people who attend, their horizons get broadened as to warfare and the air power and what all is available in the world, what all is happening. That's a big thing. So we encourage all the Air Force officers and men to go and visit the air show in rotation on those 5 days to give them the exposure of what is happening in the world and where it is, what is happening in the Indian Air Force as well as other services, and the whole ecosystem of R&D and the defense production and other things. So that's a big learning value in that. Uh, then most important thing, I've got left it for the last. The most important thing is, which we talked about, the MRO. The maintenance, repair, and overall, plus obsolescence management. Aircraft which are old, what happens is the suppliers, their factories, they shut down, or that particular model or they think they're not making. So obsolescence, more older the aircraft, more problems come up as far as maintaining it or keeping it airworthy is concerned. So this air show provides you a good opportunity to deal with a whole lot of companies, not only the major arms producers, but also the MSMEs, startups, and smaller companies who can supply alternative things to you for MRO purposes and keeping your platforms ready. That is the most important takeaway for the Indian Air Force from these air shows. Yeah, Adi.
That's interesting. So what about now? I mean, of course, just to close this interview, there has to be a little bit of a critique, and there has to be, uh, what could have been done better. I think they can give a lot more passes to people. uh, so the crowd levels were fantastic this time. That's something which is coming out in the news.
Yeah.
There, there's a whole lot of interest which is generated. But what else, sir? What else could have been
Yeah.
done better?
As I said, in the beginning itself, the air show, as far as conduct and everything, is at par with the other air shows of the world. But there are first few things which need attention, and I think mainly administration related, basically. So first is starting with is just a suggestion. Like this time, what they did was the static display area. They've increased it. It's a very good thing. You can, so that you can see aram se and you don't get crowded and keep bumping into each other. But what has happened is they put a barricade all along, keeping the uh, static display equipment and platforms other side of the barricade. So all the crowd is standing there, and you are watching from far away. And secondly, people who are in front, they can see; the people who are at the back, who can't see. So other air shows also have seen what happens is individual platform or the equipment is barricaded, so you can see it all around that aircraft, and not only from one direction. So obviously, this way the crowd management is easy. What they did this time, but then you can't really appreciate the display. So if you can manage the crowd well, I think that is a better option of doing cordoning of individual equipment rather than the whole area and see it from far. Okay, second is you know the site which they created is very good. Yeah, I mean, it got every information except for one thing which is missing, very important. A lot of people ask me, even I couldn't find proper answers. Is that people who have bought e-tickets, or people who have procured tickets, or people who are going for the public days, which gate do they enter and where do they park, which parking area? Because there are no parking stickers, there's no this thing. So that was one gray area, and nobody. I think that issue needs to be sorted out definitely. I mean, you can't let people high and dry like this. Key, they don't know where to enter from and where to park. Although there were a lot of parking areas, but which one to use was not very clear. There were still traffic jams and traffic snarls, which I think we need to still sort it out. And there were long lines for water, drinks, food, toilets. I think these Adam arrangements need to be uh, looked into, so that these sort of things don't happen. And to my mind, one more suggestion is maybe to reduce all these problems, you can extend the air show by 2 more days, maybe, and so that the crowd thins out and distributed over more number of days rather than cluttering up in one particular day. So one more suggestion is increase the on the website itself online, increase the number of live streams of the stalls and the displays and the static display, and create more of virtual tours. So people who
Mm.
can't go there, at least sitting at home, they can get a real feel of in time when it is happening. So
And paid
live
live
stream,
stream. You
yeah,
can actually pay for it and watch it.
yeah. So virtual tours and live streams, maybe you can increase them. So these are a few of the suggestions which I have for maybe future use.
I have another one, sir. Indian Air Force should do
Yeah.
many more air shows around the country. Uh, the reason I say that, sir, and this is something, I mean, I keep having this argument with my father, who's also from the Air Force. He says, fuel waste, time waste. Why are you doing? Why do you talk about this? But I personally feel that when a fighter aircraft literally flies over someone's head, uh, and probably just a single barrel roll across, the kind of interest it creates amongst the youth to at least look at our armed forces as a career, look at being a pilot as a career, is a much, it's something that you can't get inspired from anything else. I mean,
Yeah.
nice swanky uniforms, shiny boots, and this and that, of course, look nice, attract a lot of people. But I feel, that sound, that thundering sound that you can hear, it creates a lot
Yeah.
of this thing. And this time, I've seen so many videos online, people standing on their roofs and watching the air show and all over Yalahanka.
True.
So,
True. They do that.
I know people stand on that flyover that passes through in front of Yalahanka as well. They want to just see
Yeah.
the aircraft.
Some people
So,
told me, he says, one of my friends, golfing partners, he told me, he said one of the Aero Indias, he had a tempo without a roof, and he took 15, 20 school children. And he says, I parked it on the roadside where you could see the airfield. And I showed these children the full display from outside. on the roadside. That time the crowd was much lesser. This is
Yeah,
about 10 years back or something like that. But your father is right, Adi, because as I said in the beginning, the flavor of these shows is changing.
yeah.
Earlier, that's why it's called air show. Earlier, it used to be, air race, tattoo, air show, where you're displaying it for the general public. But the flavor of these shows is changing from air show to a business venture.
Business, yes.
That is why, your father is right. He's all time thinking about only air show. This is not air show. This is a business venture. You're showcasing your strength. You're showcasing your development capability. You're trying to catch hold of the government, the global market. You're trying to sell your product. You're trying to, a whole lot of things are happening.
Absolutely.
So
And
it's
the
becoming
number of displays this year was lesser as well.
yeah.
They had, I
So
think, 7, 8 displays, and that's it.
correct.
Indeed. Sir, thanks so much. Great insight on the Aero India. I hope it happens every year so that there's there's a lot more and we can actually do more these congratulations, because at the end of it, if it's going to bring in a lot of business and opportunities within India, uh, just a fleeting thought of the mind. I think the next thing that we should look at is a drone show wherein we are able to actually showcase, and talk about, develop, get into agreements and take this whole thing forward as far as drones are concerned as well. But of course, this has been a great opportunity to talk to you and learn from you about what has happened here. The MROs are interesting opportunities, and of course, the civil deals which are also happening are great big opportunities which give us a lot of advantage in a certain sense in terms of the Indian aviation industry. Thank you once again for joining me, sir. Till next time for another air subject. Jai Hind, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Adi. Jayan, Jayan. Thank you very much.